world that we're talking to farmers on our show. This is Innovations in Agriculture. My name is Jim, and welcome to the show. I want to thank everybody for joining me here today. It's here in Florida. It's 4:30 on a Friday. I've still got more appointments coming up. It's been a crazy busy last couple of weeks here, and I know it's going to get even busier in the next couple of months as all the farmers kind of get back into the swing of things from the holidays and they start preparing for what they're going to do this year. We've already lined up probably about $300,000 worth of new sales here just this week, and probably many hundreds of thousands of dollars more as farmers are just jumping on board with this. And the real cool part of that is not just that we're going to make that much in revenue, but the farmers are probably going to be making 5 to 10 times that much at least, depending on the crops they grow, of course. So I'm really excited about putting millions of dollars back in farmers' pockets, you know, and taking them away from the governments and the other vendors and all this stuff. Well, I don't care about the other vendors. I hope they do well. I don't want to take money out of their pockets, but at the end of the day, I'm here to help farmers. So just really excited. If you guys have any questions for me, please, I kind of want to make this a little bit of a question and answer period. You know, I talked a lot on this show, obviously, about us and our crop booster technology and innovations, but I wanted just to ask you guys if you have questions about, you know, how our technology works, how our company's structured, how you become a representative for us if you're in a country where we don't have representation, or maybe just general questions about farming and how to improve your yields or reduce input costs and that kind of stuff. Definitely let me know. You can also, if you don't catch this show live, you can email it to me at service@harvestharmonics.com, or you can call us at 727-324-6750. So I'll wait for your questions. In the meantime, I wanted just to talk to you a little bit about, you know, nitrogen usage, because that's something that I think farmers are still complaining a lot about. We're still getting a lot of questions about or complaints about not just the cost of inputs, the cost of nitrogen, but the supply chain issues, you know, because I've actually talked to several people and several farmers in the last week. And one thing they keep telling me is like, it's not so much about, um, you know, it's not so much just about, you know, how much it costs to use nitrogen. Obviously, farmers want to save money, but it's more a matter of what if I have a supply chain issue? What if I have, you know, what if I have a problem where I can't even get the fertilizer that I need? I can't get that nitrogen. So it's just really something that we have to look at. So I wanted to show you a graph here. I'm pulling it up now as I speak here. Now this is unfortunately with some of the reports that we get, some things are not as new. You know, it's the censuses and stuff like that are not necessarily instantaneous. But I wanted to show you this this graph again. I've shown this on a couple of other presentations, but I wanted to share this with you. And so here we go. So this graph was put out by a company called Our World in Data. They're a data aggregation company, and this is done by a lot of different agricultural censuses around the world. Now, as you can see, this particular graph was. Sorry, I have a call coming in. Let me. Sorry, I can't take calls right now, guys. Sorry about that. If you're calling in right now while I'm on the show, I may not be able to answer it live on the phone, but I can definitely get back to you. So this particular graph just shows nitrogen use efficiency. Now, of course, you can look at the same types of graph for phosphorus or potassium or other types of nutrients, but nitrogen seems to be the key nutrient, right? It's the big nutrient that everybody pays attention to. And that seems to be the one that farmers are complaining about not being able to get. Now, interesting thing, this was taken back in 2014, but this graph actually color codes different regions and different areas where you have the efficiency of nitrogen. So, for example, on the bottom here, you see the color coding here. Now you have in yellow 0 to 20%, right? And what it means is these countries that are highlighted in yellow here are only actually, when they did plant measurements, the plants are only able to absorb and utilize 0 to 20% of the nitrogen that's being used in these countries. So let's take, I don't know what this country is. Let's take Mauritania, right? This country is only using 17%. In other words, the plants that they're growing in Mauritania are only using 17% of what they're using in terms of fertilizer. Take a look at other countries like Botswana, 4.4%. Can you imagine if you spent $500 an acre on nitrogen, if you're only able to use 5% of that, like 25% of that was being used? I mean, that would be awful. I mean, that's just a lot of money. How about over here in Venezuela, right? Venezuela, 18%. That means farmers are wasting 81.9% of all the fertilizer they're using are just being wasted. It's going into the rivers, it's going into the oceans, it's evaporating back out into the air as greenhouse gases, causing environmental damage. Big problem, right? And of course, Mongolia, here's another one here. They're using 6.6%. Wow, very low. And then even down here in New Zealand, they're only using 5%. Can you imagine, again, 95% of the money you're spending on urea? Imagine if you're just pissing that away. I mean, I would rather go to the pub and have a pint rather than throwing money away at this nitrogen. And other ones in the Middle East too, like Saudi Arabia, 5.4%. We've talked to a number of different companies in Saudi Arabia and other countries here. Somalia, same thing. A lot of these countries. And then here, this light green here, you see these countries here have a light green. Now, that means that their utilization of nitrogen in terms of what the crops are actually using is only 20 to 40%, right? And so you look at the thing that's really scary about this particular graph is that take a look at the actual countries that are looking at here, right? So 20 to 40%, that means that between 60 and 80% of the fertilizer in this country is being wasted. And again, the scary thing is these are very populous countries. Let's look at China here. Think about that. China is only utilizing, the plants are only utilizing 32% of the fertilizer that China is using. So think about a country with 1.4 billion people and realize that the farmers who are trying to grow food for those people are wasting 68% of the fertilizer that they're using is just going right back into the atmosphere, right back into the waterways, right into other things, causing pollution and is not generating food for the people that really need it. Let's face it. Look at India. That's the second most populous and soon to be maybe the most populous country in the world with 1.3 billion. 34% nitrogen usage. So we're talking about a 65% use of nitrogen that's not even being used in those farms. Pakistan next door, same thing. Almost to 74% of nitrogen being wasted. And even in countries like Spain, let's take a look over here at Spain. They're using 36%. That means 63% are actually are being wasted. So huge differences there. And then you got North Africa like Algeria, Libya, Egypt. We're talking with some of the big sugar producers in Egypt right now, and they're wasting 63% of the fertilizer that they're using. So that's really huge. And even though we're here in South America, like Peru, Colombia, losing 24%, huge difference there. So, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, these countries are losing between 60 and 80% of the fertilizer they're using. And then you look at the other countries here. These countries are actually very big producers of agriculture, right? You have 40 to 60% being utilized efficiently by the plants. So take a look at a country in Brazil. They're one of the top 5 agricultural producers in the world, and they're losing, 42% of their fertilizer is just being wasted and not being utilized by the plants. How about Mexico? They're a big agricultural producer in Central America. They're losing 54% of their nitrogen. Up here in Canada, lots of canola, lots of wheat, lots of grains being grown up in Canada, and they're wasting 40% of their nitrogen. And you think of countries like the United States as being a very advanced country, but take a look at this, right? 60 to 80% utilization rate. So even in countries like the United States, where we kind of consider that these are very efficient, one of the most efficient agricultural countries in the world, even in the United States, they're losing 28% of the fertilizer they're using. That's just, again, going right back out in the atmosphere, not being used. A lot of countries here in Africa, Sudan, South Africa, all these countries here, Senegal, Mali, Nigeria. I'll get to Nigeria in a second. Niger, all these countries here, Australia losing 38%. They're losing huge amounts of fertilizer, right? And these countries, which are fairly efficient here, from 80 to 100% utilization, are good, but they're relatively small. Chad don't use a lot of fertilizer. Niger, not a lot of fertilizer. Burkina Faso, never even heard of the country. Ethiopia, these countries are not using that much fertilizer. So yes, their percentage is higher. Now, the interesting thing is there's all these brown countries here. Now, when you look at the brown countries, what does this mean? This is listed here as nitrogen mining. What that means is these countries actually export a lot of nitrogen. So they output a lot of nitrogen and they export it to other countries. So a lot of other countries depend upon these countries for their resources of nitrogen. So this is where the nitrogen comes from when they're not producing it in country in enough supply to service the farmers. That means the farmers have to get this nitrogen from these countries, right? And you have countries like, Kazakhstan and Russia, right? And even countries like Ukraine. These are big exporters and producers of nitrogen where they're exporting it to other countries that are using it to grow food. And we all know what happened around this time. It's been about a year now, or almost a year, since Russia invaded Ukraine. And because of that embargo and that conflict, that geopolitical conflict, these two of the biggest exporters and producers of nitrogen, which all these other countries depend upon for and to grow their food, are now, because of these embargoes, not able to actually export their food, their nitrogen. So that means that a lot of these other countries are having supply chain issues where they're scrambling around looking for more nitrogen because the countries that they normally get them from, they can't get them from because of trade embargoes and other things. And that's why one of the reasons why you see, especially in the Eastern Hemisphere here, why you're seeing a lot of people complaining about supply chain issues right now. It's because these exporting countries that normally would be, they would normally get their product from, they can no longer get their product from. Here in the United States and on the West Coast, there's not so much of a problem. These countries actually produce most of the nitrogen that they utilize, so they're not necessarily as affected. But the utilization of nitrogen, especially with the corn farmers and corn prices being high, has actually caused a price spike with here. Maybe they don't have supply chain issues, but they have price spikes as well. So I just wanted to share that with you because this has been kind of a question that a lot of people have asked me, and that is, why exactly are there so much supply chain issues? Why is the cost of nitrogen tripled in the last year? And why are we having all these problems? Well, a big part of that is that exact problem. And so, of course, the main reason why there's so much interest now with our technology, with our crop booster, has been because our system makes plants more efficient and able to utilize nitrogen a lot more efficiently than they can without our system. And that means that you can reduce your nitrogen usage without reducing your yield as well. So if you're looking for a more efficient method of using, technology as opposed to chemicals and inputs and fertilizers, then definitely give us a call and work with us because we want to help you reduce your input costs, but also make yourself a little more resilient and not so much, and having these negative effects when you can't get these raw materials in enough supply to grow your crops. Because if you can make your farm more efficient, then you're not going to be as much a victim of that process. And we definitely want to help as many farmers as we can. And of course, now is definitely the time before the season gets started here in the Northern Hemisphere. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, I know you guys are probably not looking to start until maybe June, July, but now's a good time to look at this. So give us a call at 727-324-6750 or send us an email at service@harvestharmonics.com. And we look forward to working with you and showing you how our crop booster can benefit your farm, make your farm more efficient, and make your farm run more efficient and economically so that you can make more money. If you'd like to be part of the future of farming today, then we want to work with you. So give us a call or send us an email and let's get together and help you become part of the future of farming today. Have a great day, guys.